when it comes to Black people's hair, I hear a lot about how, Black people don't like for their hair to be touched or, for their hair to be questioned or be policed by white people. However, we don't talk as much about the touching policy and the policing when it comes to other Black people. And I'd like to visit that conversation today. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. And many years ago, for many years when I was growing up, I had long hair. And my hair is very long, and it's at my longest, it's gone down to my butt, essentially. And one of the things that I used to have a lot of trouble with, whether it be in school or whether when I worked in retail, was people being inappropriate with my hair. And there's a thing that happens as a Black woman when you have long, healthy hair, and my hair was very, very thick. And one of the things that happens, especially when I worked in retail, this became a thing where people like get really close to you, and they try to determine of whether or not that's really your hair or not. It's like I need to get up close to her, and I need to get in her personal space, and I need to inspect. And I cannot tell you how many times that's happened. But the other thing that would happen would be that my hair has been inappropriately touched by Black people to the point where I've considered it assault. So one example of this, I've talked many times about working in the grocery store, and I worked in the grocery store where during the time period where it was like the customer is always right. So we had that sort of thing where it was like you have to cater to the customer, and the customer is this all powerful, wonderful being. That was when we really catered to customers. And I point that out because I don't know that that's necessarily the culture anymore around retail. But one day I was just minding my business, working as a cashier, and this woman and her husband came, and I was facing my customers checking out, and she was in the line next to me. And this woman, she just reached her hand in and she grabbed my hair and yanked it as hard as she could. And I'm like, what's going on? And I'm ready to like fight because this is like really hard. It's like, and she was just like, oh, I just wanted to see if it was real. And her husband was like, well, I told her not to do it, and yada, yada, yada. And I just couldn't believe it. And so there was like a verbal altercation. I'm like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? And so, it really couldn't go too far because my manager's like, well, I'm like, no, no one has the right to put their hands on you. So that was one incident of where I got really disrespected by a Black woman who thought it was okay to test and see if my hair was real. And then I've had another incident where with a Black man, um, a doctor nonetheless. So I had to go when I was in college. I had to go get a physical. I'm a person that tries to go get my physical every year. And during this time, he says, ma'am, remove your wig so I can examine your scalp. And I've never worn a wig. And so I looked at him, he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me. I didn't answer him because I'm like, okay, if I don't answer him, then he'll know that I don't have on a wig. I didn't move, because I don't have on a wig. And he's like, so I think he would get it, right? That was my line of thinking, that I think he would get it and understand that I'm not wearing a wig. And he's, clearly he did not. So he came over and he tried to, yank my hair off my head. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Don't tell anybody I did that. And he just sort of ran out of the room because he was embarrassed. And he's just like, I just don't know what to say. And I'm like, that's totally inappropriate and wild for you to do that. But again, there's just like these the thinking is that, because you're Black, you can't have long, healthy, thick hair and things like that. And, and it can even get into family, because I've had family do this as well, where my mother would do it and she'd be like, I don't know where you get that hair from. It doesn't come from me. And, she would kind of like touch it and, do all this other kind of stuff. And, of course, my dad would come in the clutch and he'd be like, I know where she got it from. She got it from me. So he would take ownership of that. But it would just, hair is such a central discussion. When it's long, it's thick, it's voluminous. In other areas, this is another story I'll tell you really quick. Um, you know, I would get, people would question my ethnicity when I worked in retail. So a good example of people who would always question my ethnicity would be Southeast Asian men or Indian men. And they would come in, and this is my experience. And they would come in, and they would quibble with me over the price of things, and you need to mark that down. That's too expensive, and how could you be like that towards your own people? And so that's been more than once that I've gotten accused of being Southeast Asian. And I had a best friend at the time. He was Southeast Asian, and he couldn't understand. It would just really just sort of sit him for a tizzy. He'd be like, "I can't believe they would say that. You don't even look like that." And it would just be, it's the hair, and it would be like the thing where they would just sort of fight with me over it. And but I think one of the main things that I've noticed is that people tend to get close in your personal space, and they kind of want to inspect your hair, and they want to see how far they can push the boundary when it comes to your hair. And they want to get disrespectful, quite frankly, to be honest with you. Is that can open up the door for people to think that they can be disrespectful or test your boundaries, and things like that. Because what if my hair hadn't have been reeled and they yanked on it and done all those things? And so it's more of like a shaming tactic, and things like that. But I don't really hear anybody talk about. I know we've had lots of discussions in our community over what good hair, bad hair, texturism, all that kind of stuff, but we never really talk about how um, you know people can perceive you and what they feel like they can get away with if you have long, thick hair. I mean, you can have the compliments and things like that. It's pretty, it's this and that. And I've certainly had my fair share of that, which I'm very appreciative of and thankful for. But then there's people who see it and they get angry, or they immediately want to test the limits, and be disrespectful with it, even in a professional setting. So let me know what you guys think, and happy Memorial Day. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, and definitely give me a follow and subscribe to the newsletter linked in my bio. Thanks so much.